All right, so it is September the 23rd, and this is MELS 601. This is Dr. Todd and Dr. Church's cohort, and this is the Clinical Coach 2 session. And once again, it is so good to see you all, and appreciate you taking the time out to join me. You don't have to join. You can certainly watch the recording, and that's fine. But it always makes for a better session when we have people attending in real time. So I appreciate that. We'll go ahead and get started. I think the first thing I'd like to do tonight, I plan on going over, well, on my schedule, I think I've got Blackboard review and Absol Task 3 and Task 4. I know some of you, if not all of you, may have already got some information on Task 3. We're going to kind of review that, see if you have any questions on it. Then we'll dig into Task 4. The good news is, if you feel pretty good about Task 1 and pretty good about Task 2, which from what I've seen, most of you do. I'm really impressed with some of the reviews that I've done, with some of the submissions that have been made. You guys are a good group. You seem to be on this really well. So I'm impressed by that, and I appreciate the hard work in that. It's good. It's really good. Not having to make a lot of deep suggestions for revision, just some things that I think might help polish everything up and make sure we get you a 3 or 4 when it gets evaluated. But this is a good group. So the good news though is, if you feel good about Task 1 and Task 2, you're almost 50% of the way there. And the Absol is the most intricate piece of what you do. So once you get Task 3 and 4 knocked out, Task 5, as you will see when we get to it, is just a matter of reflecting on what you did. Not a lot involved with Task 5. Once you get that Absol knocked out, then that's the tough part. You get your assignments done, and we'll get into Task Stream. You're still in good shape on Task Stream. I will go over that at our next session. If I see anybody approaching that point, and I don't want you to stress over not knowing about Task Stream. So if you're stressing about that and you want me to do a review on it, I'll be happy to do that. But right now, there's, like I said, there's not really anything that you could do in Task Stream. And I get it. I know your brain hurts. I appreciate that comment, because you guys are tough, and you're tough because this is a rigorous program anyway. But when you do a program like this in the middle of what we're all going through in education anyway, then I'm not gonna soft soap it. It's tougher on you than it has been, on everybody else that's come through this program prior to March. A couple of years ago when all this started. So, but on the other hand, that gives you some really good, information that you can share, some really good interview situations to where you can talk about how you responded, how you helped your school, how you did this during a very difficult time. In my mind, that makes you very marketable, especially when we were talking the other day about hiring some.
You're muted, Dr. Bullis.
Thank you, guys. That's the first time that's ever happened. So one of you guys who are really technologically advanced, maybe you got tired of listening to me and just hacked into my system and cut my internet off. So you'll go far if that was you. You'll go far in this business. So especially when you have your principal. But anyway, what you're going through right now makes you more marketable. We were talking the other day about hiring some mentors for our new principals in the district where I work. And we got to thinking, really, can a retired principal or somebody that's not been involved in education over the last 3 years, can they even really help someone who's sitting in the principalship right now? Because they've never gone through what we're all dealing with right now. So, you try to look for the silver lining in the cloud and look for the positive, and that is you're coming through a very, very difficult time. and shining very brightly. So that's going to be to your credit and will help you out. To go ahead and move forward, and that's my about 5 or 6 minutes of talking or rambling, which I tend to do. So you're not going to hurt my feelings if somebody does this. Let's reel it in there, Joe. Let's get back on task. So what questions do you have about task 1, task 2, or submitting your work for me to review in Blackboard? We'll deal with that first, and then we're going to talk about task 3 and task 4. But are there any questions out there about task 1, task 2, maybe even some feedback you got from me or one of your instructors? Is there anything out there that we need to have a conversation about before we get started?
Dr. Todd, Dr. Bullis, I did have a question. When we redo the corrections that you ask us to do we need to resubmit it back to you before we put it in the APSL task 1 or 2?
That is a great question, Tiffany. Yes, you do. And that, that's just part of my compulsive personality, is making sure that everything is as best that it can be before we collect a grade on it. Because like I told you, when it leaves me, my goal is it leaves me already at a level 3 or a level 4, whether you got feedback from Dr. Church or Dr. Todd, by the time I've given you everything I've got to give you to make it perfect. In my eyes. Now, can I miss something? Yeah. Am I human? Yeah. Do I make mistakes? Yeah. But my goal is to get it right on. So what I do is I like for you to put it in that APSL task for review. Let me look at it. Let me give you feedback. And then if you don't mind, submit it to me one more time before we grade it. And just let me lay another chance to lay my eyes on it, just in case I miss something. I feel better about that. If you're in if we get in a time crunch, then we can adjust that, because my goal is not to slow you down anyway. But yeah, that's my preference. That's my preference. If you want to go ahead and admit it to the evaluation Dropbox, I'll grade it as is. But my preference is that you send it back to me one more time for final review, and then I say, hey, this is great. Upload to evaluation Dropbox. Another thing that's come up this semester is some of you have submitted things to me PDF. Now, and that's fine. If you got a Mac or whatever program you're working on and you can't submit it to me Microsoft Word, that's fine. We'll deal with it. My preference is that it comes to me Microsoft Word, because I'll have to go in and click my cursor on the section or highlight a paragraph that I'm talking about, and then I give you comments to the side. And so you know exactly what the section of your narrative is, where that is that I'm commenting on. I just think it works good, and it helps to know, at this point in time, even if it's something that's great, like, hey, this is great, to let you know, my feedback is not just, well, you need to fix this, you need to fix this, you need to revise this, you need to revise this. My feedback is, I'm going to tell you what I see. And you put something in there that's great, I'm going to tell you it's great. If you put something in there that's right on the mark or above and beyond what's called for, I'm going to let you know. So my feedback goes both ways. And so I like to be able to click that cursor in that particular part of the document that I'm talking about, and you can tell where my comment is. With that being said, if it is easier for you and it saves you time and it's more efficient for you to submit it to me in a PDF, just let me know. So, hey, Joe, I'm not able to submit it Microsoft Word, or I prefer you just to give me feedback on the PDF document rather than Microsoft Word. That's fine. I'll do that, and I'll put my feedback there in the comments reply section right then to the discussion thread. And I don't mind doing that. But if you can give me the Microsoft Word and it doesn't slow you down to give it to me in Microsoft Word, that's my preference, because like I said, I really like to leave those comments right into the place where I'm talking about. Terry, you had your hand raised. What can I help you with?
I do have a question. When we upload the APSL into the assignment Dropbox, is there a preference on what format it's in, whether it's in Word or Pages? Is there a preference when we upload it to that?
No, not for grading. Not for me. No, not on grading. I do prefer, if you do a Microsoft Word, is you take my comments out in the margin. Just put a clean copy in there, because when you present it to the evaluator, you don't want the evaluator to see the comments and the feedback that I gave you. just make it a clean document. Yeah, great question.
So can we, because I was in there looking at the comments that you put on mine, and can I download what you did, what you commented on mine, and just download it and make the corrections? What's the best process for doing that? The quickest and most efficient?
Yeah, it's a great, Tammy, great question. Yeah, you can do that. Just go back into the document. And that's another thing with my comments, is go back into the document where I left my comments and then put your revisions in, and then just save as. And as you address each comment, you can just click delete. I keep a copy of everything I give you. So if you lost something, your computer crashed, well, even if it's a PDF and I leave my comments in the discussion thread, you can always go back. But if I leave my comments in the Microsoft Word version, I always save that on my file. So that way, if anything happens and you lose something or don't save something or whatever, I got you back on that, and I can send that to you with the comment. But as you clean that up, yeah, click right in there, do the revision, delete my comment, go on the way down the list. That way, you know you hit everything, and then you save it, and then you just download it as is or upload it as is.
So I can make the corrections in Blackboard, or I have to?
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
That's
It's
okay. Yeah, I
always
didn't
best.
ask.
Yeah, it's always best to download what I send back to you for feedback, download it, correct it, and then upload the clean version or the revised version. Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Got it.
misunderstood your
No,
question.
that's okay. I didn't ask it correctly.
Well, no,
Thank
you said it right. I just didn't hear it right. So no problem
Last night was a late night.
there. I got you. All right, any other questions on review, task 1, task 2? Okay, now remember, you can always contact me and say, I need to meet with you. I need you to meet with our group. I need to meet with you because I'm having a struggling here. I need some, some focused feedback that just pertains to my situation in my school. Let me know. We'll arrange that. We'll schedule that. Just like I told you before, I need a couple of days, maybe not a couple of days, maybe 24 hours notice, maybe the same day. Just depends on what we got going on. But I'll always do an individual or small group Zoom if you want to. So let's talk about task 3, if everybody is good to do that. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and I think what I'll do first of all is okay, we're not going to worry about that. You feel you're in pretty good shape about submitting things to me for review. Let's look at this document here. This document is going to look very familiar to half of you, and half of you it's not going to look very familiar to. My good friend, Dr. Todd, sent this to me as what she has already gone over in her class, and I will have her permission to share that. So I'm going to share it with you tonight, but then I will send the document to everybody, even if you've already got it. I'm going to, I just do a MELS 601 email to both groups to make sure everybody's got it. So this is a good synopsis of task 3. In task 1, what you did was you said, okay, I'm going to start a PLC. Well, what's a PLC? Well, let's research that and find out. So I did all the research in the PLC. I found out, and it's important to show the fundamentals of a PLC, not just what a PLC is, but what are some steps that's been shared by experts in creating a PLC and forming that PLC? What are some steps, the key steps, and I say that a lot in my feedback, essential knowledge, fundamental knowledge, key steps. That's why I want you to focus on. It's not just about what a PLC is, but how do you create a PLC? How do you show knowledge that you know how to create a PLC? Not just what it is, but what's it for? So you get all that, you go to your principal, say, I want to start a PLC. The principal says, well, do you even know what a PLC is? And you said, yeah, I did all this research. Look at all this. The principal says, great, you know exactly what you're doing. Go make a PLC, go start a PLC. So you go out and you look for the people you think is going to be on the team. You identify their strengths. You say, this person would be good here. Well, this person's weak here, but this person's, where they're weak, he's strong, or where she's strong, he's weak. So she can complement that weakness. So she'd be good here, or he would be good there. So then you get everybody on your team, you know their strengths, which is the mark of an administrator, is recognizing the leadership potential and capacity in others. I know, Dr. Todd and Dr. Church already been going over with you stuff like that. So you form that team, you get them together for the first meeting, and we're going to talk about, you're going to gauge their knowledge of a PLC, maybe have a conversation with them, sharing some of the things that you found in research that you thought were important. You're going to establish those norms and protocols, which is essential in forming a PLC, and not just that you have rules of engagement, if you will, but just the value is in the conversation. The conversation and establishing the norms for a group really starts to build those relationships and those connections and that trust that's essential in the PLC. By going through that conversation and saying, this is what we'll accept, this is what we will not accept, this is what our expectations are from each other, and this is what we'll do if somebody is not meeting those expectations in a professional, critical, collaborative conversation. Deciding all that what kind of forms that solid foundation of a professional learning community. It's not just about making rules of, when we get together, we're going to do this. Raise your hand if you want to speak. Everybody's going to be on time. That's not the importance of that. The importance of that is having those conversations and beginning to learn how to talk and work through conflict. And when I talk about conflict, I'm not talking about arguing and disagreeing. I'm just talking about problems arising and the group solving them together. So you do that, and then you establish the purpose of the PLC. And the purpose of the PLC is to take that fundamental knowledge that you've shared and that you have, and use that to move forward in your professional learning community. Task 1. Task 2 is all about looking for the need. All right, you go through all the data that you have available. You and your team, you facilitate the conversation. You and your team talk through all that data, and you guys focus on the most pressing need. How did you get the data? What was the criteria that you used to process the data? Show the data, show why that data is important, show why certain parts of that data is important that led you to the need. All right, so you got a functioning PLC. You got permission from your principal to have one. You guys went through a deep data dive, and you know what the most pressing need is. Now what? And that's task 3. And task 3, if task 2 is all about finding the need or the problem, if you'll let me use the word problem here, if task 2 is all about finding the problem, then task 3 is all about finding the answer to that problem. And to find the answer to that problem, or what's out there that may meet that need, you got to go back to what the experts say. Has anybody else recognized this need? If so, what did they do to address this need? And what results did they get? And did somebody do something different? Did somebody else do something different? Whatever this need is, who out there recognized experts engaged into a process of improvement that had an impact on this need? And that's where we get into the evidence-based practices. Now, somebody might have tried something and it failed. That's just as important as finding something that created a success, because you know what didn't work, and then you can analyze what didn't work and see what that might help you find out what did work. We all go back to Thomas Edison, 1,000 ways to not invent a light bulb thing. But that's where in task 3 is you go out there and look at the evidence by researchers that are out there and find out what they did to address this need. And you show that you've done that because you're searching for a possible solution to your problem. And that solution has to be evidence-based. If you're a Title I school, and with all the ESSER money that's flowing into the systems now, there's so much compliance and so many regulations on schools right now. If you do just about anything, you have to prove this is why I did it, because I have research that shows it was an evidence-based move. It wasn't something flash in the pan. It wasn't something that somebody said, hey, let's try this. We went out there and we looked at research, and we determined by research what direction we wanted to go to address the need. And that's all about task 3. Task 3 is showing what you researched, showing how you took that preliminary research and shared it with your team, and then how you and the team determine that evidence and what direction you may want to go, and how you share that with the administrative team, whether it's the principal assistant principal, or school leadership. So this is what Dr. Todd presented, and this is straight out of the scale handbook. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But the things I highlighted is that, you know, when you consider something, make sure that it's connected to your problem or your need that you identify. Make sure that you can show that in your narrative. Make sure that you have a conversation with your PLC team as why this might be a possible solution. And then, you know, you need to present what you found to your PLC. So that goes back to strong evidence of leadership. Many of you seen that comment come through, where I say, hey, this is strong evidence. This section in your paper shows strong evidence of leadership. Or, you know, I didn't really see strong evidence of leadership. You might want to do this, show how you facilitated the conversation. And that's all about this little second highlight here, is how you lead the group, how you present all this research. And you don't have to be the one to go out and find all this evidence-based practices. One of your leadership competencies is delegation. If you get the team together and you have the team to help you pull this stuff together, and then you as a leader facilitate the presentation of that information, even if it came in from PLC, you're good to go there too. And you guys go through that and find the best practices. Now, I wanted to really, a lot of times this second comment kind of, you know, can cause people to trip a little bit or be a little bit of a challenge. Is in the scale handbook, it says in the prompt and in the directions that you must utilize a form of technology that is not already being used with the targeted population. The intent of that statement is that you're not just going to talk about something that you guys you're already doing, technological wise. If it's some software program that you're using, is that you don't present it as, you know, this is something we're using. It's really encouraging you, challenging you to look at the latest and greatest that's out there. Now, that's not a non-negotiable. I know it says you must utilize a form of technology, but there may be some best practices out there that doesn't utilize technology, and there are. So if you run across that, and I'm not saying you will, and I'm not saying to go look for that, but if you're struggling with that statement, contact me, because we can write the narrative and phrase the narrative around that to where, now if there's some you know, form of technology out there that's not being used, like you know, like, I don't know, like Canvas, like Google Classroom, which a lot of people are already using that now, so I don't know if that's a good example. But then, you know, use that, you know, see if you can find that. But if you're at a point where you can't find anything, contact me and we'll have a conversation about that. I don't want you to get hung up on that. I don't want you to get hung up on that, because it has hung up some other candidates over the years. That is just an effort to make sure that you explore all possibilities, especially technology wise, that may be out there for your students. Tara, yes, you have raised your hand.
So I do have a quick question on the technology. Is that just something that we research and says that this would be good to use, or is this something that we should try to implement?
Wow, I tell you, everybody's asked a question tonight gets a gold star. These are really good questions. No, it does not have to be something you implement. That's something that you and your team considered to utilize, and you shared what you looked at. This is all about just what you're looking at. So it does not have to be something you implement. It can be something you and your team rule out. Skyly, yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, so there's a new technology system that we're trying to use at our school, but we haven't used it yet. And I mentioned that in my task 2. Is that all right if I use that again in task 3, or is it I have to choose something like that I haven't mentioned yet?
No, you can reuse that. And I gave that feedback on a lot of well, I don't say a lot, but several papers too. And I'm not saying yours because I can't remember exactly about that, but that just reminded me. Some of the times you put things in task 1 or at the end of task 2 that kind of transitions into, or into task 1 that kind of transitions into task 2. and that's okay. You can re-mention that in task 2. If it's all about setting up, if all about setting up what you're going to look at. I saw that, Tara. That was awesome. I'm sorry. I don't mean to embarrass you, but I love it when I see stuff like that. That's awesome. Somebody gets, I don't know who that was, but somebody loves somebody, and that's so cool. If you didn't
That's
see
my son.
what? I'm sorry, what, Tara?
That's my son. He's home from college.
He is a fine young man. He is a fine young man. Just for that very example right there, by no other, you can tell that young man is a fine young man. I commend him on doing that. You are very welcome. And that tells me you are a great mom. That's great. I love to see stuff like that. And there goes my ADHD. I got distracted, but it was a good distraction. Yeah, you can transition to that and get back to Skylar's question. If you mentioned it, it's okay to mention it again. If it comes up in conversation in the PLC, share that. And then you can take an earnest look at it, or it may be something that's going on at the school that's part of the profile of the school. You can talk and utilize that too. It's a great question. Great question. One of the things I also want to mention to you is that make sure that you use graphic organizers and visuals. It can be something that you create, but a lot of times when you look at evidence-based practices, especially if it's somebody trying to sell something or present something, they're going to share visuals with you. They're going to share what it did for them or what it's done for others. And you can always find that, even if it's a research that somebody else has done and somebody else has done an action plan to address a need, they're going to present that. And you can present that too. And that could be part of your graphics and visuals, and how it may have, how it impacted that particular population that somebody else used it with, and then have a conversation about if it did that for them, how would it relate to our students? What's the impact that it could have on our students? And because that's one of the things that's so important about the school profile is you're in a unique culture, unique system. So you need to be able to discern what may have worked for somebody else may not work for us. Singapore math may not work in, Murphy County, North Carolina. You got to judge your culture and your students and the capacity of your teachers to apply that, even though it's a success somewhere else. It may or may not be a success. So you need to have that conversation with your professional learning community. And you guys may not be able to come to any conclusion, but you need to have the conversation of how would this impact our students? And then show those graphic organizers and visuals in that regard. Any questions at this point?
Does that conversation come like in the literature review part where we're talking about the conversations we have with our PLT when we're synthesizing like commonalities between the research? Is that where in this paper physically it would come?
Yeah, it's a great question, Cynthia. Yeah, it can. It certainly can. It could come, in task 3, it could come in wherever you want it to, because the whole conversation is going to be involved around what's out there. Does it address the need that we established, and will it be a good fit for us? And then, okay, we think it will. Let's tell the principal about it. So it can come in at any point. If I read your paper and I feel like it might be help better with the content and flow for the reader to be placed somewhere else, I'll let you know. But it's just really it can occur. There's no set rules for that. That was a great question.
I also have a
I'm sorry,
question,
go ahead. Yeah.
we have a program going on in our school right now, but we're not implementing the program to the fullest. Like, we're not using all the components. So can that be part of the solution? Absolutely.
That's another great example, a great question, because that's new. That's something, and there's some validity to that, because that might be, there's a foundation in place and familiarity with what you're using now. Well, let's expand and enhance, and maybe that will address this need. Maybe that's why this need is there, because we haven't utilized this particular evidence-based practice to its fullest or to fidelity. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's that's a great scenario. I'm glad you shared that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, sure, Maggie, thanks.
With my PLC, we came to the conclusion that we needed to, our most pressing need was fidelity, intervention fidelity, making sure and ensuring that every kid gets their intervention and tracking that intervention. So fidelity was our most pressing need, because with COVID and everything going on at our school, is there like evidence-based resources for that?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. And you won't believe this, but I've just had, on the way home, I had a principal call me and we had just about that same conversation in regards to EL students, is doing those interventions for language acquisition for EL students. And, you know, for EL students, there's reading A to Z, there's text talk, you know, those things are out there and you can utilize them. The importance is properly recording that data, properly progress monitoring that data to show that, you know, what impact did this intervention have when we go through the MTSS process and response to, I think it used to be called response to intervention. It was when,
RTI, yes.
God bless you, whoever said that thing, because I couldn't remember, is, you know, are we doing that to fidelity? And there's plenty of research on there that says this is the process, this is what you want it to be. And you may want to zero in on that progress monitoring piece and being able to graph that data to where you can determine what effect has this intervention had on this child's need or this particular need. So yeah, there's evidence out there. Fidelity, now, you know, there could even be, I'm not familiar with one because MTSS isn't my forte, but there may even be a progress monitoring tool out there that you could, you know, investigate as a possible. And remember, if it's a $300,000 technologically advanced package that you think would be applicable for the situation, put it in there. It doesn't mean that they're going to, you know, your system's going to abide or even be able to afford to buy it. That's not the case. And there's nothing about the ABSL that says this has to be implemented. Nothing. If it is, that's great. That's fantastic. But this is just all about the process of taking a group of people, finding out what the problem is, finding the solution to the problem, and coming up with a plan to address it. That's all this is. You don't have to implement anything. So don't shy away from anything because it costs too much. I have seen candidates run across that before. I'm sorry, Tammy, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. We've already got an idea of how we're going to ensure that fidelity. But I was just like, oh my God, when you said all that, I kind of freaked out a little bit.
Yeah, don't let me freak you out. I can do that. If I do, it's not intentional. And I always ask a question. We'll try to rephrase it to where I don't freak you out. That's not my job. My job is not to freak out or freak you out. All right, so I just want to have that conversation with you. Now, I'm going to send you this document if you don't have it. Dr. Todd always does a great job with stuff like this. You know, there is a little highlight here about, you know, how many resources you have, your online resources, and I highlighted those just to make sure you saw that. Like I said, I'll send this out to you. And there is a importance here, and there's a lot of feedback that I give on task 3 is that there's not enough visuals, there's not enough graphic organizers. Now there's a difference in you know, and talking about something and putting, you know, percentage here and percentage there and percentage there within the narrative than there is putting a chart or a graph or a table or a timeline, a visual of some kind. And you know, and I have an issue with graphic organizers. To me, a chart, a table, and a graph is not necessarily a graphic organizer. You know, I'm thinking about the old fishbone graphic organizers. For those of you who've been around, that's the way I was trained, thinking maps type stuff, for those of you who've been through that. And so it's hard for me to get away from that. But so I say visual. I just say visual. So any visual, just make sure that you have those visuals there, because what that's asking you to do is being able to address the different learning styles of your group and the people you may talk to, and how to take a visual, pull out important information from it and share it with those that you're wanting to share with. So make sure that you have some graphic organizers, multiple, you know, that's an ambiguous term. Multiple to me is more than 3. But if you have a problem with that and you have a problem pulling that in, contact me and we'll talk about it on your paper. So once again, I'm going to send this out to everybody just so they have a good, everybody is looking at the same information. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into the scale handbook. So task 3, we kind of went over that. You need an annotated bibliography. I have in my content section, I think, and probably in Dr. Todd and Dr. Church's, there's a document about helpful hints to create an annotated bibliography. Make sure that you see that. Let me move you guys over. Let me grab your pictures and move you over so I can see the rest of my screen here. I'm pretty sure I've got, no, I think it might be in my templates and resources. And you guys should be seeing my Blackboard thing. Yeah, comparing an annotated bibliography to a literature review. Dr. Todd and Dr. Church should have that. You've probably already seen it, but if you haven't and you can't find it, you can find it in my templates and resource section in my Blackboard shell. It'll help you know what to do and you know what do you do for your literature review and what do you do for your annotated bibliography. So task 3 is you go out there, look for those evidence-based practices. You create your literature review, you have a conversation with your PLC team, you come across the annotated bibliography, and then you kind of zero in on the evidence-based practices that you want to use. Now, when you use it and how you use it, you're going to share later on. This is just all about the search and the conversation. So once you find it, you share that with your principal. You guys using multiple visuals. You demonstrate how you project that this evidence-based practice is going to have a positive impact on your need, and you have that conversation. So we'll look, I'm going to pause for questions, and while we do that, I'm going to go down to the rubric. All right, so this is what I'm looking at. This is what Dr. Todd's looking at. This is what Dr. Church is looking at. This is what your evaluator is going to look at. And it's just basically pulled right out of the prompts. You need to have a literature review. You need to have an annotated bibliography. You need to focus in on online tools or some technology that may be new. If you can't find that or it's not applicable, contact me and we'll look at it at your individual situation. You utilize all that information and always go back to referring to the need. It doesn't have to be done throughout the paper. It can be done, it can be done at the end of the paper, or it can be done after you list one evidence-based practice. How's this going to address the need? How's this going to address the need? It's however you want to do that. And then you talk about how you presented that, you and your PLC team, with you leading, you facilitating, presented that to your administrative team as a possible solution to this problem, and what you project the impact to be. Any questions on task 3? Yes, ma'am. Tara, yes.
So I'm not sure about anyone else, but I'm having a hard time visualizing how this should look. Because I'm thinking when you say annotated bibliography, I'm just thinking annotated bibliography. So is there an example of how it should look somewhere? Did I just kind of look over that?
Yeah, I don't know the template. I'm not sure. I can't remember too much how good the template is. But what you want to do is you want to have a section on literature review. So what literature did you review out there that has possible evidence-based practice to address the need? Then after the literature review, you do the annotated bibliography. So that's where you take each of those references and you highlight them specifically. And then you put your information about them underneath that. That document that I showed you should help with that, comparing annotated bibliography to literature review. Let me know. Let's see, helpful hints. Absol final evidence narrative. I can't remember. I don't think it really gives a clear example. And you should be looking at the template now. I should still be on screen share, and you should be seeing all this. Task. Oh, I went too far. So apparently it doesn't, because I just blew by it then. Task 2, task 3. Yeah, there's not a good example there. Yeah. I tell you what, if you get hung up on that, let me know. Let me know. Check that document that I shared with you that's in my templates and resource session on the difference between an annotated bibliography and a literature review. After you read through that and kind of peruse that, if you're still having a problem, let me know, and we'll work on it. We'll work on it. Yeah, good deal. Good deal. I hesitate. I could give you a example. I could give you an example of everything. I could give you a lot of examples of everything, but I hesitate to do that because, and I'm sorry about that, but I don't want to squelch your creativity. I don't want you to not get the experience of working through that. So forgive me, but I won't let you struggle. This is to anybody who's struggling with this. I won't let you struggle either. And what I share with one, I share with all. So know that. So I'm not going to share with somebody, not share with somebody else. So just know that too. Going down, let's talk about, let's see, 742. Yeah, let's talk about task 4. All right. Task 1 is about forming the PLC team. Task 2 is about finding out what the need is. Task 3 is about finding out the solution to the need. So you know what your need is and you know what a possible solution is. Let's put it into action. Let's create an action plan. And what an action plan, and you guys have done this as educator, an action plan is who's going to do what. Well, what do we think is going to help? How are we going to implement that? What strategy are we going to use? Who's going to be responsible for what in the strategy? How long are we going to, what's the timeline on the strategy? And how are we going to evaluate if that strategy the strategy is going to have some impact, either positive or negative or no impact. No impact is an impact and needs to be documented. So how are we going to evaluate that to determine what effect this strategy had on what we wanted it or had targeted to have on? So that's all about an action plan. So you're going to create an action plan utilizing the evidence-based practice or practices, not just one, but practices. It may be a multi approach here. You're going to develop a plan to follow to implement what you think is going to address your need. And then you're going to present that to your administrative team again. Now, like I said, if you present this plan and they think it's the greatest thing ever and you end up being a multi-millionaire because of it, don't forget me, okay? I'm an old broken down coach. I'm going to be putting old coach's retirement home any second now. So don't forget your good old friend here if you become a millionaire off of this, and I've helped you do that. But anyway, and if they do, they want to implement what you did, fantastic, that's great. If they think it's a great idea, but they can't implement it, fantastic, that's great. If your principal says, well, no, I don't think we'll utilize that, don't get your feelings hurt. Just, hey, that's great, because you're going to get the same grade nonetheless. If it's done properly and it's done according to the rubric, even if it's not implemented, you're still going to get your licensure. You're still going to get graded for this, and you're still going to get credit for this. So don't think it has to be implemented. So just value the process and value the experience that you have by forming an action plan. And I dare say you may not have called it an action plan, but as a teacher, you guys are doing action plans all the day, every day, probably since day one. You're what problem am I having? What's out there that can help me? And how, if I find that, how am I going to use it in my classroom? Or how am I going to use it at our grade level? So this should not be anything new to you. We just have to demonstrate that you know the process and that you engage in this specific process. So once again, before you show the reader that you have an action plan, show the reader that you know what an action plan is. Doesn't have to be a lot of research, doesn't have to be detailed, but you will demonstrate that you have knowledge of and know how to develop an action plan. And you can do that. Just research what an action plan is. Same thing you did with PLC research. There is no requirement on resources here, so you don't have to worry about that. To show the reader that you went out there and you found out what the experts said about an action plan, and you write that up. Now, some of these headings here, or some of these this bullet list here, needs to be a section in your narrative. Other pieces of it will be included in your action plan. The importance of an action plan, research-based, that could be a subheading. That could be a heading in your narrative, or subheading in your narrative. Alignment with student learning outcomes, that can be, how is this action plan going to be aligned with the outcomes that you want? Okay. Now, as far as short-term, mid-term, long-term goals and objectives, specific activities, indicators of success, clarification of roles and responsibilities, and how to evaluate, or the assessment criteria, that can be all contained within the action plan. Okay, it doesn't have to be. Now when you get into some of the other evidences later on in the program, you'll see this list again, and you will have to do like a section on each one, but here you don't have to. You can talk about it all briefly and then show your action plan, but introduce your action plan and talk about your action plan. So when you do the action plan and you want to have some narrative there that introduces it, that talks about the research that you went through. If you've worked with your PLC team on forming it, then you want to talk about that, because you always want to show leadership. And then you kind of briefly talk about it, but some of those things are going to be contained in the action plan itself. So as long as you introduce the action plan, talk about the action plan, kind of have a conversation on the action plan, then the action plan will satisfy a lot of this. And so, and it does need to be in the format of an action plan. Now, I've seen some creative uses of this, and as long as it's backed by research that you did in forming an action plan, I'm going to go with it. But the action plan format's basically what I just said. There's a strategy, there's a timeline, there's a person responsible, and there's evaluation. That's the basics. But you can, let the research guide you on how you want to form that. And then you want to show the graphic action, a visual of your action plan. A visual of that needs to be shown. And prompt 2 is you present that to the administrative team. And so you and the PLC team, once again, we can get into delegation and roles and responsibilities if you want to do that. And the team wants to present to the principal, that's fine. But that action plan, part of that conversation needs to be about, and these are headings that need to be addressed after the action plan, is how are you going to build efficacy amongst the staff to implement this action plan? What's your theory on doing that? What's the strategies to sustain the action plan? And how's it going to address the diversity in the subgroups? What resources do you need? And how are you going to create the vision of where this action plan is going to take you? So you need to talk about that. Now, it doesn't have to be long and drawn out. I look at it and I feel like you need more detail, I'll let you know. I know you're quite a ways of getting to this point anyway. So your professors can follow up with this. I know Dr. Todd's going to do a great job, and Dr. Church too do a great job of introducing task 4 as well. So this is kind of just a preliminary conversation, just kind of get used to thinking that. But that's basically task 4 is the action plan and showing what you intend on doing, how you intend on utilizing evidence-based practice that your team addressed, and sharing it with the principal. And this is going to be some of the questions that the principal would ask. How's the teachers going to implement this? How are they going to be empowered and supported in implementing this action plan? Can we sustain what you're suggesting? Is it going to address all the subgroups that we needed to address? What resources do we need to implement your action plan? And what's your vision for this action plan? Where do you see us being at the end point of this action plan? How's this going to help? What's the projected impact? We get back to that. And you kind of already addressed that up above, but what's the projected impact? That's what a principal wants to know if you come to him with an idea. Is how can we support it? How can we sustain it? And what's it going to do? And how is it going to address each diverse group that's represented, and what's it supposed to look like at the end? All right, so it's 7:51. So I'm going to pause and see what any kind of conversation, discussion that have to be about task 4, then have to be about task 3. Any question that you got that I can help you with? I'm going to take a look at the chat, make sure. Okay, good. No chat questions. Okay.
So please forgive me, task 3 at the very end, we're just presenting this to the administration to see if they're going to go for what we say the solution might be. Is that correct?
Yeah, just to kind of get validation or affirmation and get their feedback because, you know, there's a degree of this that's political. You always want to let the principal know what you're doing in their school. And that's just a good, as a principal, I always felt good when people included me on some conversations, especially if somebody's suggesting something that happens at my school that I'm responsible for. If you mess up, superintendent's not going to come to you most of the time. Superintendent's going to go to the principal. So if you're suggesting anything, you just want to keep them involved in the process. That way they're knowledgeable of it. That way they can give you their years of experience and skills and strength as well. And a lot of you have your principal or your assistant principal on your PLC team. So then, you knock out 2 birds with 1 stone type thing. But yeah, that's the main reason, is just to make sure that they stay involved in the process, that they have the opportunity to offer any feedback. Great question, Weston. Go Apps.
7-0.
All right. Anything else? All right. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. And once again, if I suggest something or give you feedback on something and you think that I have totally misunderstood or missed the mark, you're not going to hurt my feeling. This is a partnership here. We're going to work together to get you through this program. And I just want to be sure that, that I may not get something right because I'm not able to look at it through the same lens that you're looking at. So this is a 2-way street as far as conversation and stuff goes. And I'm giving you feedback based on what I've seen and how I experienced in the past. But I haven't seen every situation out there. I haven't been involved in every unique culture of every school that's out there. So if you think I'm missing the mark on something, part of this is getting it right. Part of this is meeting the rubric, but part of this is also, what value you can draw from it, what value your school can draw from it too. And so do not hesitate to say, well, I didn't quite mean it that way, or I don't understand what you mean, or I don't think it fits with what I'm doing here. That's great. That's those type of conversations, that type of conflict resolution that you need to experience and continue to work through, because there's value in that process as well. So call me, email me. If we need to do a Zoom, we'll do it. If we need to do a small group, you and your peer group wants together, that's fine. Even if you got something you want to run by me before it goes to your peer review group or before Dr. Todd and Dr. Church, I'm okay with looking at it at any point in the process. Even if it says, I can't get this sentence right. Give me some feedback on how to write this sentence. Shoot it to me in an email. Don't send me something like that that's kind of preliminary and you just want a quick response to and just want me just to take a look at it. Just email it to me. You don't have to, put it into Blackboard if it's something like that. I'll help you at any stage in the process. I mean, I love doing this. Call me weird, and I've heard people say that a lot about me. I love this. This gets my teaching fix in. I don't get to be around kids. Not that you guys are kids. Not that you're old. I'm not stepping on any toes here, but I don't get to be and help people in this type of context a lot anymore. So I really love what I do. Really love what I do. Sure. If you want to see me individually, or you want to stay after class, we can do that. Let me go ahead, unless there's any questions, I'm gonna stop the recording.